Okay, so we're going to start with this second part of the workshop. So now I'm going to introduce once again Frank, that has spoken this morning, and now he's going to tell us about user story network analysis of literary texts. Okay, Frank, let's start.
Thank you, Gimena. So before the lunch break, I said now is when the fun starts, and I mean it. Now we look into the data, trying to answer the question why we do all these things. Why do we invest so much time and money and people in building a digital corpus that really works as it should? And I will start the user stories with this network analysis of literary texts. What is a network? This is a network. This is a network of all the characters in a German play written by Lessing, Nathan der Weise, Nathan the Wise, Nathan el Sabido, from 1779. And what do we see here? We see the relations between the characters of the play. So we see Nathan, of course, and we see all the people that he speaks to in the play. So he doesn't speak to everybody, but he has a very central position in the network. So when did this network analysis stuff all started? It started out in the 1920s when sociologists first tried to look into relations of that people had in larger networks and in several social environments. But only in the 1960s, with a group at Harvard, it started out to become a real theory with mathematics behind it and with a real epistemology behind it. And in the 2000s, also literary scholars began to apply this network theory and network analysis to social networks or to networks of people in plays, in novels, in literary texts. Just like here. Now, this is not only... There are two things to say about this graph. It is automatically generated just because we had TI in the background, and with markup that told us who a person is. So the computer told us who's talking to who. We didn't even have to read this play. And the second thing that you have to know is that there is mathematics behind it, that you can calculate with this and retell, stories in a mathematical way with a very high abstraction level. And these are some of the degrees that you can calculate, and you have some measures that are connected with the play. You have 14 characters. That's always called the network size of a graph. And you have the person that has the contact to the most people is the Sultan. It's called Saladin. Talks to 9 people. So the maximum degree of any person in that play is 9. And all sorts of other measures. There are many more, but those are the most important ones per play. And now you have character-oriented measures, like, for example, the degree, meaning, how many people does a character speak with, and something like the betweenness centrality. This is a measure that you can all look it up on the internet. I won't write the formula somewhere because it looks a bit complicated. But what it tells us really is who in the network is the most central person, over which person are the most information is flowing. And there we see that the value of Nathan is pretty high, but not as high as the value of Saladin the Sultan, who is not, whose name is not featured in the play, but Nathan. So you could argue that the protagonist of this play isn't really Nathan, who, it's the eponymous play, it's Nathan the Wise, but according to the centrality measures, Saladin the Sultan, appears to be more central. So that way we can, talk about literature in a very abstract way, and we are building on things that structuralism in the 70s, 80s already found out, but now reformulated with data that comes out of XML TI, with mathematical measures, and these are real hard facts, and as humanists we're not really used to deal with hard facts, but we like to discuss things, ambiguous things, and plays and literary texts, they're still ambiguous. We still have to discuss what it means and how meaning shifts with different theories. But here we have hard facts that are, that we can use to, talk and discuss these plays. So how does it work? These are 2 snippets from a digital edition of the drama Faust by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, the great German classic. And those are 2 representations from 2 different corpora. So the first one is from the German text archive. This is very clean TI. You can even read, I hope, that all the speakers, they're inside of tags, so the computer can really tell us who a speaker is and how many texts he has or she has. And the second example is a different corpus, is the TextGrid repository, which uses a different approach. This TEI was generated automatically, so there are some issues still, but thanks to this we also know what a speaker is. Faust, again, is a speaker. We know that without having to read the text, and that's how we can generate all the numbers that I showed before. And this is a project that I'm pursuing with 3 colleagues. One of them is here on stage. It's Mathias, and 2 other colleagues from Göttingen, Per Trilke and Dario Kamkasper. And what we're trying to do with this is look into interactions of the characters on stage without actually having to read these plays. But of course, we are all literary scholars. We don't want to avoid reading. We just want to reformulate questions. And the metrics that we're using, they're all provided by social network analysis. And in literary plays, we have small networks. We have networks of 10 people. In Shakespearean plays, up to 60, 70, 80 people. And sociologists look into networks with thousands of people. So what we do is not really that heavy. And what we want to do is, of course, automatize the process. And the advantage is that we can read with the machine thousands of plays, that nobody could ever read. So in order to do it, we need the corpus, and that's why I always want to stress that it's still important to build corpora, to invest money in building corpora, in trying to put the cultural heritage that we have into corpora and use TI XML so that we can actually work with it afterwards. Those are 4 corpora when we started out that were candidates for our research, and we took the TextGrid repository because it's the biggest German corpus of dramatic text so far, and it consists 666 plays. And this is the search mask that you end up with if you call the page TextGrid repository. And that's also, if you use TextGrid, you can still contribute to this thing. So this is really an image, a picture that I like. It's a bit blurry, but you can download a high-res version on the web. But it's pretty large. It's almost 200 megabytes, so it takes some time to download, and you really need a good computer in order to be able to portray the data. And this is what we call a distant reading showcase. Franco Moretti introduced this whole thing called distant reading in an essay in 2000. But I don't think that there has been any showcase of distant reading that's worth mentioning, because distant reading normally means you look into, at least that's what Moretti does. He looks into one text, Hamlet in his case, trying to see what network analysis could do, but he doesn't apply it not even to his second text. This shows more than 600 plays, and of course this is very distant reading, so we hardly see anything. We have to zoom in like this. Those are only those 93 plays from 1731 from the 18th century roughly, and we see when networks start to explode. For example, this is a play by Goethe, and this shows clearly that it was at this point that German authors started to read Shakespeare. Before that, they all were following the classic doctrine: not too many characters on stage, 6, 10, and everybody is related with everybody. And when Goethe started to read Shakespeare, it was like an exploding network. 70 persons, some just appearing aside, and they were still part of the Dramatis Personae. And here we can see from a distance this is when literary history happens. This is when authors change their writing style. And that's what we can see just by looking into the network graphs that we only have because we prepared nice XML. We can also use this kind of visualization method to correct our data. For example, this is a network built to show the relations between the characters in Schiller's play Die Räuber, the robbers. And it shows that there are several characters appear more than once. This is because their names were written differently. And if we would correct this data, we would have to scan the whole TI text, which is really no fun. And here we see in the network, if we have, characters that the computer thinks are two characters, and we can correct the data by looking at the graph. This is really something that I also have to stress, that you don't only make things look nice with visualizations, but that you can use it actually to correct the data, not only to conduct your research. In order to correct our data, Mathias had a very fancy idea to write a game around it. You all heard of things like citizen science. You make people work for you. Somebody call it slavery. I don't know. You make people work for you because they want to. And there are many great examples like Transcribe Bentham. That's a project when people contributed to the digital edition of the works of Bentham because they wanted to. And this is one of the success stories of citizen science, and this is an approach to actually, provide people with some kind of, fun as well, while correcting the data, while still contributing to cleaning cultural data. And how it works is this. I think there's a prototype online, but I think there will be more work done in the course of the next weeks and months. And it works like this. You have different levels, and you could, the first level you could mark persons that are obviously one and the same. And in subsequent levels, you can also say, okay, this character is a woman, this character is a man, this character is the son of this and that. So we can build ontologies by people like, philologists looking into the data and helping them to enrich it, helping us to enrich it. And then we can really start some even better, try to solve and answer even more sophisticated research questions. Like, so, for example, how did the role of women change throughout the 18th century? I don't know what this... Yeah. This is the data of another Goethe play, Iphigenia of Taurus, just to show you that this makes no sense. This is a play with 5 characters. Every character talks to each other character. So the measurements are really all the same. Everybody has an average distance of 1. Everybody has a degree of 4. But this is just to show you that the mathematics behind network theory can show us what we already know, also as some kind of proof of concept. And this is the last slide, I think. When we started out, we wanted to do digital literary history. We really wanted to know things, know about things that were happening in literary history by just looking at thousands of plays. And this could be one first result. It's a very basic measure. It's the network size, meaning the number of characters per play. And you actually see that in the beginning, this starts at 1730 and goes up until 1930, so roughly 200 years of German literary history. And you see how they, in the beginning, still followed the classic doctrine, not too many characters on stage. And then it's kind of like the networks are exploding, just like I showed before. And then there's a little backlash after the Romanticist drama, when people were coming back to writing plays with less characters. And then you have all these conjunctures inside of literary history. This could be one easy result, but of course it doesn't stop there. This is just one indicator, and we cannot retell literary history just with one simple graph, which this is. But this is where we started, and this is really what we want to do: retell digital literary history, because we have all these thousands of texts that we can now ask with our methods, with mathematical network analysis methods, for example, that we try to apply to beautifully XML-TI markup text. So what we did here, and what we are still doing, is establish a workflow for literary network analysis from the corpus cleaning the corpus, and then trying to answer questions. And it was all automatized, because without this, it wouldn't make much sense. And it also works alike for corpora in different languages. Also thanks to TI. For example, there's a French corpus, Théâtre Classique. And of course, the TI tags, you don't have to translate them. Speaker is speaker in all the languages. So we can actually look into the data and get to know things about plays in languages that we don't even speak. So was what I wanted to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank.